Hello and welcome to Flosstube number 7. Very long overdue. I was checking things, trying to figure out what number I was on, and discovered, well, it's been 5 months. I knew it'd been a while. I kept thinking about making one and then would run out of time or family was over. Lots and lots of distractions and interruptions that made sitting down and making a floss tube a little difficult. My name is Naomi and this is my channel Belle Stitches Pirates. It's a channel about cross stitch, although the quilts might be confusing. I got married last spring and my grandmother made the wall hanging twin quilt for my husband and I as a wedding present. So we're now going to go to a sort of plans WIP parade. This is not all my WIPs, because the ones that I don't plan on working on this year until I finish something are in a box in the closet. So this is the first one. It is the one that I didn't, was having a lot of difficulty with. I got a good chunk of work in this one quite a while, in 2020. Didn't do hardly anything with it in 2021. I pulled it out, worked on it one afternoon, and put it away and never touched it again. For the reasons that I said. The greenery on the house, which you'll see in a hot minute, is making me crazy, and I can't count stitches. So until I had a way to figure out what contribution I had made, it was very difficult. So all of this is stitched until we get to here. So right along here, obviously where all the threads are, is where I'm at in terms of stitching. So I've got, all that mountain, and the side houses. But down in here, as you can see, there's all this confetti greenery from the flower boxes. And as soon as you start putting in the green, it starts getting insane as far as difficulty. And I know I wasn't planning on not coming back to it, because when I pulled it down, a piece of thread that I'm going to have to match to the bobbins just hanging off the side. So it's my oldest, well, it was my oldest WIP. I was cleaning and found another cross stitch piece that in a box that is officially my oldest WIP, because I think I started it on a trip to see my mom like 4 years ago. So that's only 2 years old. I started that in January of 2020. It was a Christmas present in 2019. So then I worked on, and these are in order by oldest start to newest start. So this is Tropical Treasures, and I will put pictures up in the corner. It is on fabric, 22 count Hardanger fabric that I jar dyed. I don't even remember which blues I used anymore. But I dyed it and it was really dark on one end, and when I laid out the fabric to start placing the design on the fabric, I realized that the dark end was not down where the water is in this piece, and I really wanted it more light up at the sky area and darker down towards the bottom. And so it was along one side. It was like along the side was dark instead of across the bottom. So I took the fabric and I very carefully put it back in the jar so that the bottom would go to the bottom of the jar, and did the whole dyeing process all over again. So it's double dyed with a 90-degree turn in the placement of the fabric. And it came out really cool. It's a full coverage piece, which is kind of funny. But up in here is 2/1. And it was getting really insanely bulky, and finding ninja stitches was almost impossible. Like, you could almost see the void, but then getting the stitch into the void was really challenging. And so I was like, I'm just gonna see what it looks like to do 1/1 down in the tree, and how much of the background actually shows through. And like, you have to really get in there to even possibly see. And a lot of what you do see is actually spaces that I need to go in and stitch. But finding those ninja stitch, those ninja stitches in the middle of it is so much easier. It's, when you get up close and personal with it, it's a lot less all over. And then, so I switched over to 1/1. And so all in through here, there's random spots where it's 2/1, and there's other spots where it's 1/1, and it's really not noticeable. Like, you have to really get up close with a magnifying glass to see the difference in the density. And it's stitching up so much faster. So much faster. I'm really excited because I finally started some blues. There's some navies up in here, but this is like sky blue. So I'm getting into a new section of color. And I'm slowly converting this over to I watched a video by, I think the channel is Thread Thy Needle. I will put it below if I've said it wrong. I think her channel name is Thread Thy Needle, or Thread the Needle. She did a tutorial on her method of stitching on the diagonal cross country, and she has two ways she does it. She either does strictly within the diagonal, or she doesn't move outside of that diagonal line. Or, and as soon as she gets down to the end of the thread, wherever that color ends in the diagonal, she ends the thread and puts it away, or if it's really small, she gets rid of it. But then her other option is you get to the end of the diagonal and then you start stitching your way up the diagonal with the stitches. And I was really enjoying doing some cross country kind of within the section, within the frame. But I was also very aware that, because this section I stitched on the diagonal with parking, and I really disliked the parking. So I liked I disliked having to change my needle all the time. The millions of threads I can deal with. It was changing my needle all the time. I felt like I was taking forever. And this is a HAED. It's huge. It's like 500 stitches one direction and 600 or 700 the other. It's a huge piece. I wanted to make progress. I wanted to see progress. And so I was feeling like I wasn't making any progress. I wasn't going anywhere. only did 2,700 stitches on this piece last year. I focused more on another HAED that's a pirate themed one. And I decided for 22 and 22 that I was only going to pick one of my two HAEDs. And should some bizarre miracle happen where I finished one, I would put the other one in. But I wasn't going to take up two, at least for now, I wasn't going to take up two of my spots with a giant piece that I knew I had no way in hell of finishing. I probably shouldn't say that. No chance that I would finish. So I went back and forth because my Pirate Retreat one, I got 11,000 stitches in it last year. And it was not a focus piece. It was, I had focus days where that's all I stitched on for 5 or 6 hours. And put in like 1,000 stitches or 900 stitches or something of that nature. You know, most of the time if I pulled it out, it was because I had a big stitching session and I could just sit and stitch for hours and hours on it and just chug away. But I really wasn't going to be I didn't focus on it. If I focused on it, I'd probably finish it in about a year. So it's one of those where it's like, okay, which do I choose? Well, I started a piece for my husband's birthday that you'll see later. Also a bit piratey themed. He loves pirates, I love Belle. And he really wants that one stitched up, and that one I can finish. I can probably finish it by his next birthday if I keep it at the top of the pile and actively stitch on it. I mean, you'll see in a bit how much I got done on that piece, and I started it in the middle of November and worked on it for about 2-3 weeks. Like focused worked on it a total of 2 or 3 weeks. So I was like, I don't need 2 pirate pieces. So I picked this one. So this one will get the love this year for my HAEDs. And we'll see how much of that frame I can fill up. So then the next piece that I started in Mania of 2020, and it doesn't look like a lot, but it's M.A.P. It's M.A.P. Mysterious Adventure Project by Ink Circles. And I'll find the previous picture, but I had done like, you know, I hadn't even filled out all the way out to there on the border. But I had done some of the border. So I sat down during Mania. My goal was to touch every piece that I had started the previous year and put at least 100 stitches in it before I started anything else or messed with anything else. So I sat down and just did one solid day of stitching. And it was a day I probably wasn't doing anything because, you know, and I just did the repeat over and over. I got about 1,500 stitches in this in the course of a very long day. And this is one that I coffee tea dyed the fabric. It's 28 count Monaco. It's going to be a forever in an age piece. Because I have to stitch the whole border, and then we move on to the next task, which is like figuring out, I think it's figuring out where your shoreline is and stitching in your shoreline. Yeah, that's going to take a while. Figure out where I want to put these. Right there. So then from there, we went to I have this one, which is the Steampunk Mermaid by Brian Kesinger Designs, charted by Cunning cross stitch. So Brian Kesinger is like a illustrator or graphic artist. He does illustrations for books and stories and things, and has kind of that steampunky vibe, you know, he has a lot of nautical inspired illustrations and pictures and things that have, and they strike me as having the a steampunk era, Victorianish era vibe, but very Industrial Revolution. So I worked on this. I had started it in Mania of 2020, and I hadn't done much more than like right up there. So, pardon me. So in 2021 Mania, I sat down with it, and I put in, I kind of got rehooked on it in terms of, I felt like I was finally making progress. And I did all of this and all of this arm, and then I did a bunch of other things and never came back to it until right around Christmas. I had something that I think the challenge that asked for mermaid, or it asked for something that I went, oh, I'll do that one. And so I did the whole hat, what I've done of the hat. And then I added, and this lavender pink fabric is very interesting. Sometimes it looks pink and sometimes it looks purple. And then I had just a little bit more that I needed to do for the challenge, and so I did like right there. And that one, I only put in 949 stitches last year. A handful of days, like 2 or 3 days worth of working on it. A little under 1,000. But this is one where I'll work on this one, and when I finish it, I'll pull out one of my other many Brian Kesinger designs, and work on that. Then in June of 2020, I started Pandemic. And I'm sure you will, if you've watched my other videos, you might remember the horrible situation that happened where I worked on it. I imported it into Pattern Keeper. Didn't closely check the import worked, because it's one of those that it was an unsupported design, so it might work and it might not. So I stitched all this, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, something doesn't look right in this repeat. Like right up here at the top, it looked like I was missing a stitch, and I'm like, did the stitch slip and I just need to go back in and like redo it, you know, or what's going on? And then I started looking at the bird, and the bird was too skinny, and it kept going and it kept going. And I pulled out the pattern pulled up the PDF, and I'm like looking at it, and I'm like, I am missing an entire column of stitches. This is going to become a nightmare, you know, because does the bird look okay? Yeah. Does it exactly match this one? No, it's missing a row of stitches, or a column of stitches. A whole sliver of its body is missing. Can I, you know, live with the little tiny missed repeat in there? Yeah. But if the entire column is missing, that means it's going to affect the whole thing. And I was in such a rush to get it started that even though my piece of fabric was too long, it's the right width, but it was too long, I didn't chop it off. So when I figured that out and got Pattern Keeper fixed, you know, re-imported it and double checked every single overlap. When I got that all imported in and it was all perfectly copacetic, I turned my fabric around 180 degrees and I started over. And I don't remember, I got at least back to where I was before I found the mistake. But I've put a lot of work into this, even though it's only been a day here or 3 days there. And I added this year, I don't recall how many stitches I had in 2020 finished. I think I had most of this first bit right here finished, but I got almost 13,000 stitches in there. And this is the other corner. So I'm still stitching it on the diagonal. I'm still stitching it with just one strand over. It's one strand over one on 28 count. I forget what the color is. Platinum. Platinum is the color. Sparkly. With Sullivan's Royal Gems variegated thread. It's red, blue, and purple. And this piece comes out whenever I feel like not thinking. It's my, I don't feel like concentrating today, which seems a little bit odd in that it's not necessarily a piece people would think that you could do that with. But because I do it on the diagonal with one color the whole way through, no changes in color, it's literally, I'm going and I'm doing a full stitch at a time. So I'm going back and forth in a zigzag line. And I'm not focusing on what is the design that I'm stitching. I'm not like, oh, I'm stitching a bird. Oh, I'm stitching a triangular border repeat. It's literally, okay, I need to stitch 8. So I stitch 8, then I go and mark them off. And I'm like, okay, I need to skip 3 and stitch 2. And I do that, and then I mark it off. And the only decision I have to make once I finally finish all the cross stitching is there is some back stitching. Some places have more back stitching than others. And because Pattern Keeper doesn't import those, and as well as it was recommended to utilize a different color anyway for the back stitching, once it's all finished, I need to pull up the PDF and take a look page by page at what's the back stitching on this page, how does it affect things, and figure out what color, if I'm going to use a contrasting color of some kind for those backstitch pieces, and then go in and backstitch them. But it's not a heck of a lot of backstitching, so the possibility that it'll bog me down when I get to that point is, I'd say, fairly minimal. I don't like to be buried in backstitching, but I also don't mind backstitching as if it serves a purpose. It's just when it's tons of it and it's tedious and it's difficult to see, then I think like many of us, I get annoyed with it, and therefore I don't want to do it. So whenever possible, I do try to do my backstitching as I go. The next thing that I started is the Shannon Christine Designs did her first Christmas club SAL. Her first Christmas club. It wasn't a SAL. It was just a Christmas club. In 2020. It was 15 designs over 5 months. And so you'll see there's a piece missing because I did 2 of these. And I did 2 of the do not open until the 25th of December, and I used 1 on a present. So I've been just, every so often pulling it out, working on. These have basically everything except their beads. And then warm wishes. Some of them have more beads than others. I pulled it out yesterday. Yesterday? Yeah. Yesterday. And 'tis the season. Come on. Behave yourself. 'Tis the season had most of this S. I had to like there. Had all the 'tis, and it had the top part of the E, and it had some of the gingham border. So I finished the E, did the A, did the second S, finished the tail on this S, did the O, did the N, finished the gingham border and the last couple stars. And it's not Kreinik. She calls for Kreinik. I'm using all the called fors except at the time that I started this, I didn't have Kreinik, and my nearest LNS was closed. And who knows if they had Kreinik. So what's the next best thing when you need sparkly thread in a hot hurry? I went and got the spools of the DMC Diamante from my local Michaels. So finished all the stitching minus, there's a handful of beads here. I think there's some beads through here and up in here. So minus the beads, this one is all done. And so then I moved on to the next one, and I forget if this one's have a cup or there's a have a cup of cheer. And this one, so she has the very red and green feel for about half of them. And then the others have some of those same colors. The brown colors tend to cross over. So like these browns cross over. But then she goes into pinks and teals for the alternate, the other set. And gives it some variety. You don't need everything to be red and green at Christmas. So, plugging away. And once I get them stitched, I've got, I had measured it out, and I had a lady on Etsy who cut me chipboard squares with rounded corners. and I only needed like 16 of them. She did them, I think, in sets of 50. So I figure, well, I'll be aiming to make a bunch of ornaments that size. And then Shannon and Christine did a Halloween club in 2021 that was 2 or 3 months. And then followed that with the Christmas club, or a Christmas club for 2021. And so I have all those patterns too. I don't know if I'll do them on that fabric. So right now that fabric is just the 2020 Christmas club. Then we have where I got to in with Cunning cross stitch Magic Kingdom SAL, which the last release was in December, and I think I'm on March. I got way behind. So Ariel is January, Alice in Wonderland is February, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs I have finished. It's a crap ton of confetti for the dwarves along with the fractional stitches and everything. And once they finishes each of the movie scenes, ultimately builds up the castle, which is really cool. So this is my Cunning cross stitch piece for the year. I'll only be a year, well, somewhere in the neighborhood of a year behind if I manage to finish it this year. And that's almost 3,000 stitches. Then I started my next start in March of 2021, actually on my dad's birthday, oddly enough. I started Mirabilia's Lady of the Flag in a periwinkle blue conversion that I found in a Facebook group. And so I've just been going through, and I dyed my fabric. I started at the middle. I started at the center. I shouldn't say the middle. Started at the center and started working my way from the center over, and then I started working my way from the center this way. So I have from the middle almost to the bottom of her skirt, the voids that you see up in here are pretty much all beads. And so I'm working on finishing out this, but so far without the beads, I'm already at 12,500 stitches. The other thing that will slow me down at the top, I'm actually, the next time it's off the hoop, or off the Q-snap, I'll probably check my fabric width to see what size scroll rod I need, and if I have one that I can do. I don't have a lot of scroll rods. I have a lot of Q-snaps, not a lot of scroll rods. But I do have a few different sizes from when I was trying to get something that would work for the Venice Cafe, I think is what I really call it. I'm not even sure what the name of that piece is, but for my stamped canvas piece, you can't put that in a hoop. It squabbles with a scroll frame. So, trying to get a scroll rod that was long enough, you know, I bought a handful of different scroll frame options, testing out what it was that I was going to do, how I was going to do it, and be comfortable. So I needed, next time it's off, I need to check my back, you know, my spare scroll rods and see if I have one that's long enough, and if not, I need to get one that's long enough, get a set so that I can start beading it, because I want to do the skin in a Splendor silk conversion. And I have placed the order with my LNS for a bunch of their different silk skin cards, because I'm just not sure what it is, which colors I need to substitute in. And so I figure I just play. I placed that order September, maybe even August. I happened to be in the neighborhood in October, and I called, and they had not received it from the manufacturer yet. So I'm still waiting on my Splendor silks for the skin conversion. And that's all the top half. Well, it's not all the top half, but a chunk of it is the top half. And I really don't want to be messing with the top half and trying to figure out what, because 1/1 you do have to do a little bit of creative editing to make the line smooth and not choppy looking. But yeah, so my goal is to get this all done and then put her on a scroll frame and start beading the bottom half, and hope that by the time I do all of that, my Splendor silks will be in and I will be able to do the skin. Otherwise, I will just probably break down and do the skin in DMC 1/1. Which won't be the end of the world. I just really liked the idea of the Splendor silks and being more true to a skin tone. My next piece start was the Owl Forest Embroidery Alice in Wonderland. And I did a chunk of work on this. It's amazing for how big it is. You'd think there would be more stitches. So it started out in the middle, and then we went up here and we did, or no, so we did the arbor. We did, get it up. We did this arbor, and then we did these side roses and pots. And then we came up here to the rabbit, and we worked our way kind of down the story. So there's the rabbit. There's Alice falling through, and the beverages and all that, and her gloves and a fan and more little border pieces. And then here's her giant foot from when she grows big, and the cake. And there's the house with her peeking out of it. And then we come over and we find ourselves the little caterpillar. And I don't know what those are. They look like lizards. So when I went, and then there's the White Queen, I think it is. When I heard about it and went to investigate it, I really liked their floss. I was like, oh, that's really cool, you know, support a dyer. you know, I can buy the flosses and, you know, they're doing the pattern for free. And their floss packs were out of stock. They were sold out. So I waited a few more weeks. They were still out of stock, and I knew that coming from Russia or the Ukraine, that there could be a holdup in customs. And I'd say about a week or so before the SAL started, I decided that I was going to take a dive through my stash and see what I could find. So I was looking at each of the colors on their website to see, like, okay, obviously it's not going to necessarily be 100% accurate, the photo, because of computer monitors and all that. But I'm going to just take a look at it. And they had two versions. They had a 3-color version, and they had the colorful version. And if I'd gotten the kit of floss, I would have gotten the colorful version. But to convert it over to my own floss stash, I thought would be easier to do the 3-color conversion, especially since this color, let's go here, this color, their website says that it is just straight up ecru. They don't even, you know, that particular one, they don't even dye. They give it an internal name. So really the colors that I had to worry about, aside from the, you know, because I had a crew, was the greenish brown one that they called bogwood. I think it's bogwood. And then they had one that was like shades of red. And I had a floss from Threadworks that was greens. It didn't have quite as much brown, but it did have a little bit of brown in it. And then I had a bunch of that. So I was like, okay, I've got plenty. I'm not going to run out. And then for the red, I, you know, looked in my overdyes, and I had a hank of dyeing for cross stitch. One of her colors, I think it's called Firebane. I'd have to look it up again. So I pulled those and put it on a blue fabric for Sky, because Alice does a lot of falling and being outside. So I figured blue for a Sky, that works. And I'm behind because it just finished. They released the last one around Christmas. I haven't worked on it since September-ish. I got it all caught up to around the 10th release. I think there was 16 or 17 releases. And then I got on other projects and I haven't gotten back to it. But my goal with that one is to finish it. It's more than halfway done. She's got 14,000 stitches in her, which that doesn't seem like enough stitches for how much of that piece is done. Another category that I kind of created for myself is smalls, but specifically smalls by Brooke's books. I have a whole mess of her patterns, and this one is my start in May. She has a Lizzie minion and a Mr. Darcy minion, and I love Pride and Prejudice, so I have Mr. Darcy's done, and this was my start on Lizzie. Got part of her dress done, and that's her bonnet. And I have the various things. So like her hair she did out of memory wire, which is now discontinued, but I managed to find some in not necessarily the color she called for, but in a color that I felt was appropriate. So I will finish Lizzie, and then I'll go through my Brooks books and pull out the next one. I have the whole, I think it's the whole Bride series. I've got Emerald City, was it fairies, like the Christmas spirit fairies. I got one of her like bundles that she was selling at one of the holidays, and I look at them and I'm like, these are really cool. I still need to finish the Minions, so I'm gonna finish the Minions and then go to my Brooks books and pull out the next one. I have a stack of perforated paper that I can do them on. Then my Memorial Day start was Land That I Love, and I will put my end of year picture that I took for the group in here to show you where I was before, but I basically have most of the alphabet done. And then at the beginning of the year, literally I think New Year's Day or New Year's Eve, I was like, I really want to work on that. I was watching Elizabeth Ann Can Stitch, and she pulled out her piece of it, and I'm like, I want to work on that. Okay, am I going to finish the corner over here that it's mostly alphabet that I haven't finished? Or do I want to do something different? I want to do something different. So we're working our way down. And this piece just, it sits on my coffee table, and I work on other pieces for various challenges as they're called. And if I don't need a specific piece for a challenge, I pick this one back up. And my goal is to try to get basically whatever is in the frame stitched before I put it away for a while. So it's going quite quickly. I stitched on it off and on. It's actually a fairly, at least when it's on this is an 11 by 11 Q-snap. When I first started it, I had it on an 11 by 8 Q-snap, and for an 11 by 8, it was surprisingly easy to take it with me. You know, it's a hard copy, it's a paper pattern. I just had a piece of cardboard in my project bag so that I had something hard that I could mark off on the pattern what I'd done. Kept a pair of scissors with a cap on it in there, and because it doesn't have like a million flosses, it's not too bad for being a piece that you can just take with you. There were a couple of Sundays where my husband's like, hey, my aunt needs help. You know, she lost her husband in February, and he was did all the electrics, did lots of lights, did the security. So, you know, she's adjusting to not having him around, but my husband's good with that kind of stuff. So when the internet's not connecting to her computer, or the lights don't automatically switch on when they're supposed to, or they don't switch on at all, she calls him. and usually on Sunday, because that's the day when he's off, ends up going, and I go along for the ride. And so there were several Sundays where that was going on, and I just grabbed the project bag with this and, you know, sat, you know, while she's showing him all the things she needs fixed, sat down and visited with the dogs while pulling out my stitching and sitting there and stitching. And it was not so cumbersome that I couldn't actually work on it. So then my October start, well, one of them. Oh, I should have pulled it out all the way. We're at the fun part. So I had 2 October starts. One is a finish. I just need to fully finish it. So the first one was Proud Peacock. It's a buttons and beads mill hill. And this one's completely done. But this was one that I worked on while doing laundry for an ice show. And I already had it started, but I just pull it out and stitch on it. The only thing I did all at home was the beads. And then when I got done stitching that one, while waiting for motivation to do the beads, I stitched this one, and all it needs is the beads. So it's currently living. I have I'm not even sure what it's called. It's like a little bead tray. So it's got velvet here. It's got a little ridge here. I may have even gotten it like Joann's or Michael's. Or possibly Fire Mountain. That would probably be one of the 3 places that I would have found this. But in like their jewelry beading section. So it's padded here. I can actually, like the sharp beading needle, I can actually like poke it. It doesn't go very far because it's got a hard, the back side of it is probably cardboard, but it's fairly hard, or chipboard. And so what you can do is you've got your, you know, beads or your project or what have you. And in this case, I've sorted the threads onto little thread things. But I've got the beads, and you just take and you fold those 2 sides over that way. The short side with the Velcro, and this short side, and you connect your Velcro. And unless you do it really loosey-goosey, now keep in mind, I have I sort the beads into little bead boxes that I label, because Mill Hill kits come with a million extra beads. Well, some colors come with more extra beads than others. I think they just do, okay, this one gets a half a scoop and this one gets a whole scoop. They're not like the European cross stitch company is reported to do with their Chatelaine bead kits, where if you need 4 flower beads, you get 4 flower beads. Now, Mill Hills do for the fancier button type beads only give you the 1. The bigger beads, they only give you the 1. But they don't sit there and count out, oh, you need 50 of this color and give you 50. They just give you a scoop. So usually there's extras, which is great as long as you have a way to collect them and keep the colors separated. So I'll sit down with this, and I'll take one of the little baggies, and I will have my little boxes, and I'll look first to see, do I already have a box label with that color? And if I don't, I take my label maker and I make a label for the top that has MH for Mill Hill, the code number of the bead, and whatever the name is that it says it on it. And so far I haven't found that the code number and the name don't match, at least across Mill Hills. So I do an actual like descriptive name on the lid, which is hinged, so it actually won't separate. But then because they sit sideways in the carrying case, I still need a way to not have to pull each one out to check what number it is. So I take and I do 2 numbers with an inner space, so they stack them one on top of each other, which makes them real tiny. And, you know, do that on my label maker and cut them in half so that they have these little teeny tiny strips of a number. And then I stick that on the side of the bead box. And I'll try to remember to grab a bead box the next time I do Flosstube, hopefully a lot sooner. My goal now that I've got a place that's a little more permanent, in terms of I've got it set up to film it in my craft room, whereas before I was hauling a table in from outside into my husband's not really craft room, but his side room, which was at the very back of the house. And then I was having to, you know, move all my stuff in there and then put it away and take the table and put it back outside. It was a production. So this way I'll just have a spot where if it's something I need to talk about or want to talk about while I'm filming, I just stack it. And so I'm going to try my very best to film. I'm going to try every week from now on so that you're not getting a 5-hour video like this one is aiming towards. It's an hour and a half, and I'll probably cut out. I may break it up into a couple of spots, so it's not quite as clunky and unwieldy, because I think I talked for like 40 minutes at the beginning. But long and short to say, I will put it on my list to bring my bead box out in a future video to show you how I organize those. But I just take the little packet once I've got the boxes pulled for those numbers or labeled if I don't already have that color, and I pour it onto the little mat, and I use the needle to sort them. And I just, you know, go through and, okay, here's orange, you know, big orange ones, and I pull them and I drop them in the box. And I pull them and I drop them in the box until they're all sorted into the right colors. So I really don't have the beads loosey-goosey in here anyway. If I'm not actively beading, the beads end up being enclosed in a box. But it does make for a really nice way to keep everything together while I'm waiting to bead. And I know that I have my beading project right here. So when I go to stitch on it or sort the beads, it's in here. I don't have to worry about where did it go, which project bag is it in. My next beading project is in here. Okay, the last couple of items. So November and December, I actually did start several things. And you may remember this from my earlier video. I did an unboxing of Forbidden Fiber Company's Bridgerton box. They did a box for the Bridgerton series. And I finally got around to starting the pattern that was in there. They sent us a hard copy in the box, and then they sent us the digital after, I want to say a couple weeks after we got the box. We got the digital copy that was Pattern Keeper friendly. So this is all Pattern Keeper friendly. I'm using their called for flosses that were included in the box. I'm really liking the Duke's color. It's this one right here. And I could have sworn on the skein that was black. It's a really deep, variegated, bluish black. Like, it's more blue than it is black. Like, really dark navy. But I did a chunk of work on this. I think I worked on it interspersed. Like, it was a big project, and then I had little projects that I was, okay, I'm tired of the house kind of a thing. Like, I really enjoyed working on the house. The only thing that my husband keeps giving me grief about is the fabric. This is the fabric came in the kit, and this color are really close in color. So when it's inside the, you know, like surrounded by other colors, it's really visually there. But up here where it's the railing of the top of the house, of the roof, it's a little harder to see. So when because I started with that color. I started with all the like edging of the color blocks. And my husband was giving me grief that he couldn't see it and I needed to change it. And I'm just like, nope, I'm gonna trust the designers. This needle minder came in the box, and this one I got from somebody on Etsy. I was getting a needle minder she was making for another group and saw this one, and it fell into my box, or fell into my cart. So when I started this project, I was like, I have a Lady Whistledown needle minder, it's coming out. The house alone is 4,300 stitches so far, and it's not finished. There's a whole nother wing off to the one side. This is my husband's birthday start in November. His birthday is Veterans Day. And the fun thing about this was I was showing him not even the actual patterns. I was showing cover photos. And he saw the picture of this and was like, took what I was stitching out of my hand and was like, no, you have to start it right now. And I'm like, dude, I only have the pattern. I need the specialty floss. I need the buttons. I need fabric. And it had a special fabric that was specifically dyed for it. And I'm like, I need everything for it. I've got the pattern. I just got the pattern. So he was so adamant that I was like, okay, fine. So I started looking, trying to source the supplies, and found somebody who had the specialty flosses. I had almost all the DMCs. I think I needed like 2. I just went to the store and got them. But so the fabric, this is Glendon Place's new release called Poltergeist Pirates. And it comes on a fabric specially dyed for it called Bang. And I was able to find somebody who had all the called for, or all the specialty flosses. They had a specialty floss pack, and they had the button pack. But they were out of stock on Bang. And I thought it would be, since he was so adamant he wanted me to start it, that it would be really cool to start it for his birthday, which was less than a month away. So I went ahead and got the specialty floss and got the button pack. But then for fabric, I'm like, okay, there's no idea when, so let me look for something else. And this one is a Fabric Flare Moonless Witch's Sky. And so the piece is large. The piece is large enough that I have very narrow margins, but I suspect what I'm going to do is frame it. I want to say like an 1/8 1/4, or sorry, not an 1/8 1/4, 1 1/4 inch margins on this thing. Which is aside from the fact that I needed more of a margin to be able to use my Q-snap and not be cursing, is why I've got the muslin edges. That's how I expand a fabric out if I need more space on it to be able to stitch comfortably. So I had the Q-snap on, and I started with the moon, and it's been about a month since he's seen it. And I'm stitching, and he goes, "Is that a moon?" I said, "Yes." And he goes, "You're stitching a piece called Goodnight Moon?" No, dude, I'm not stitching Goodnight Moon. But he saw that and saw Goodnight Moon. Now, he has since become a fan, and I get fussed at for not working on his pirate ghost ship, or his pirate monkey, which is what he calls my HAED that's a pirate piece, because all I've got so far is the monkey and the parrot and a whole bunch of border or edge. So the moon is completely done. It's back stitched the whole 9 yards. And then that's all done. It's completely back stitched. I've started the back stitching, and this is one of those pieces where you want, even in the instructions, they're like, you want to back stitch while you go, as you go. Now, I did not fully read the instructions. I like scanned through them, and the one thing that she says in her instructions from her model stitcher is that you want to do the DMC, stitch the back stitching as you go, and do the specialty flosses last, which is pretty much all Petite Treasure braid. Yeah. The moon is nothing but Petite Treasure braid. There isn't a lick of DMC in here. I take it back. The only DMC in the moon is the back stitching and the eye. All this yellow is Petite Treasure braid. All the blue is Petite Treasure braid. I didn't read any of that. I went, here's the edge of what where I can start stitching. Moon, page 1, moon. It's fine. It'll get itself a steam assist if it needs some help, but a very gentle, far away steam assist. That's about half the ship that's finished. I love the dragon on the front. I saw it and thought it was cool. Even if my husband hadn't liked pirates, like I saw it posted on Garon Stitchery's Facebook group, and turned around and said, "Can you add that to my expo order?" And he said, I can. Send me a message with your email so I can match up your orders. Or just reply to your previous order with, please add Glendon Place Poltergeist Pirates. So all of that is almost 10,000 stitches. I did dedicate the better part of probably 2 weeks in November to that. I stitched on it almost exclusively for a number of days. And then I settled down to make plans for No New Starts 2022 and determined I needed to get moving on some of my other plans. Which leads to my last 3 pieces. These are my December starts. This one is ABC de la Brodeuse by Jardin Prive. I decided that this piece lent itself to very creative, go with the flow color conversions. I have a mess of dyeing for cross stitch silks. 50-yard skein mess of dyeing for cross stitch silks. And so including her floss of the month silks, which she frequently does she does four skeins in that, and one is a variegated of the major color in each of the other 3 skeins, and they all work together. So what I'm doing is I picked the month that had green, copper, and blue. And so I'm doing I'm stitching with the highly variegated skein for the capital letter. And then I'm picking one of the other colors to do the words, the rest of the word. And then if those symbols don't correlate well with a color that was previously, or that it was patterned for, then I have, I looked at what was the color that was called, and there aren't that many colors in this piece. She charted, I think, 12 or 15 colors, which, considering this is an alphabet sampler that is 500, 600 stitches long, it's a massive bevel. So this is 300 stitches. I got a small start in on it. I'm enjoying, even though I haven't made a lot of choices yet on color, I think what will really kind of make or break me is there's a lady, a seamstress or woman, girl, whatever you want to, however you want to call it. There is a person here. My trickiest part will probably be skin color. Determining what color, if I like, and I'll be honest, I may pull it out. I redid some, I forget what it was, something with how the variegation was doing here. I changed my mind on, I think I did solid colors to start, and was going to do the variegated all through the rest of the words, the lowercase letters. And I did like Ada and started on button and was like, no, I don't like this. And I'm going to run out of floss, because her Silk of the Month is not, it's 4 skeins, but it's not 450 yard skeins like when I buy a skein of a color. So like this one, the skein was dyed in such a way that one half of it's this quite yellow color, and then I forget what the other half of it is, but it's like a complementary but totally different shade. And so a 50 yard skein, well, now I've got 25 yards, give or take, of a predominantly yellow, and I've got 25 of the other. This has slightly variegated copper and green and blue with a highly variegated tricolor, and I think I want to say they're 10 yard skeins in the Silk of the Month bags. That's a significantly smaller amount, and I'm doing the alphabet. I'm doing words. So, you know, I didn't like how the variegation was transitioning for each of the letters. Like some of them would get 1 or 2 stitches of one color and then be a whole different color. And I just didn't really care for that. So I ripped it all out, started over, which is fine. I still got to start, and I'm finally putting my very tiny scroll frame to use. Tiny at 8-inch wide banding, 7.5, something like that. So that's my super creative color convert as I go piece. And then I got, during the Black Friday Thanksgiving Day sale, I got the Polar Beauty Mandala from Chatelaine. And once again, I looked at the floss list and I said, okay, this centerpiece is pretty much, or it looks to me like it's all DMC. So I went and I pulled the DMCs. And I looked at fabric and I was like, I don't have a piece big enough. So I ordered a piece from 123 Stitch. I did not look at the instructions before I ordered. And I went Polar Mandala, Northern Lights, Winter, Snow, Snow Sparkles and Glistens. I'm gonna get opalescent fabric. Opalescent white sounds like a winner for me. And then I'm sitting there, you know, going through the instructions to make sure that I understand how she has it set up to start, and realized it says opalescent is not recommended. I don't care. So this is my 900 stitches over 1 on 32 count for the center. I decided to do the difficult version. It is a lot of dark right here. It ends up getting like the polar or the northern lights down in here. And that very first missing stitch in the corner, or 2 missing stitches, I think. We're gonna focus. You get the picture. The little missing spot. It's like a Gloriana or something like that. It's one of the specialty colors. So I was like, darn it. I don't really want to have to go back in and do all the ninja stitches of that one color in 6 months, or however long it takes for European cross stitch, you know, for me to have all the money set aside for European cross stitch. So I was looking to see, okay, can I source this other places and get at least the threads? Maybe I'll get the bead pack from European cross stitch, but at least the threads from max two locations, and get them sooner rather than later, like not go on a wait list. So I started with 1 2 3 stitch, and they had about 2/3 of the threads, and there was a couple of threads that they didn't have at all, like period, didn't carry that specific thread. So I started looking for somebody that did carry those specific threads, that had it listed in stock, and finally located a store that said that if it was on their website, it was pretty much in stock, pending, you know, catastrophes in digital land. Had a reasonable policy on shipping and all that. Like, I wasn't gonna put in an order for $20 in floss and get a $40 shipping bill. And it's like, okay, so now I have an idea of where to go, who to start with for kitting this. I just need to set aside the money. And then I got a package, turned out to be from my boss, with a Visa gift card and enough on it to cover the threads. So I bought my specialty threads for Polar Mandala. I just need the beads. Before I show you those, because that's haul. Before I show you a haul, I will show you my very last WIP of the year. It's just my very last start. So I've messed around. I wanted to do a temperature project, and I'd made a chart, because our temperatures don't get terribly cold. They don't go below freezing very often, and for the most part, they don't go above 100 very often. So I didn't want to end up with a chart that was basically 3 color, or, you know, a piece that was basically 3 colors, because our weather just didn't change that much in a bunch of months. So I fiddled with the temperature chart, fiddled with some of the colors to better suit my preferences, and had started a temperature piece and really didn't ultimately like it. Like, I got January done and I was like, no. So then I was like looking for a new piece, a new design, a temperature design, and nothing really floated my fancy. But I've been wanting to do the linens and threads, which is now Fox and Rabbit, 2019 SAL. I think I have a peacock theme going on in my life at the moment, because I did the little beaded peacock from the Mill Hill kit that was a peacock. But this one's called Peacock Garden. It's their 2019. And I basically played and fiddled and played and fiddled and counted and played and fiddled and figured out how to break it up into daily sections. So this is January's release, which is the whole peacock. Some months aren't big enough to do all the days of that month. And then there were certain things. So this is actually, you might say, hang on, we're only on the 6th day of January. That's true, except this is going to be for 2021. So it has some swans in one of the months. And so there were certain elements where I actually earmarked those elements for the temperature of a special occasion or birthday of somebody special in our life, so that, you know, and I decided for whatever reason to do the highs and the lows. So when I started, originally I was thinking I was going to tweet it, because I'm stitching 2/2 on 36 count. And this is peanut butter and jelly from Fortnite Fabrics, fabric of the month last year. I forget which club. I think they're duos. I was in 2 clubs, Filthy Rich and duos, or famous duos, famous pairs, something like that. So it's peanut butter and jelly. It took me a bit of playing around, and I'd probably do it slightly differently. So what I tried tweeting where I had one of each color, one of the high and one of the low, and stitched them together, and that just looked awful. I mean, I was starting with this one where it's pink or lavender and blue. And you can see the difference. So what I ended up doing is I did a snake, if you will, back and forth, every and alternated. So if there was a stitch supposed to be there, I started with the low and went low, and the next stitch was high, and back and forth. So it was roughly the same amount. If I had to do it over again, I'd probably do like 1 stitch along the edge as the low, and then the rest of it as the high, or fill in the negative space with the low. I do it slightly differently. This one, oddly enough, we had a variation of about 2 degrees. So it ended up being the same color for both. That was the only one. And then when I got here, I decided that I really didn't want the tweeted look or the back and forth look, checkered look on the body of the bird. It was okay on the feathers. So I did the low for that day is the crown, and then the high is the body. And this one I did the high is the bulk of the body, with the low being this patterny effect, and then the low being the like leg to upper leg, and the high is the rest of the leg. And I really like that. So as I go along, I'm going to have to be mindful and careful with how I do the highs and lows. And I may not do the lows all the time. But I have it all planned out how I'm going to break it down into days. And I have all of my temperatures listed in a chart so that I can literally go, you know, let's say it's one of the releases, you know, let's say March has, or the release with the swans has wedding day number 1, wedding day number 2, and our birthdays. Well, those are in completely different months of the year. April, July, August, and November. Because it's in a spreadsheet, I can just, once I stitch it, I can hide that row for that date. Hopefully I don't have any accidental issues. But yeah, I'm really liking this idea of futzing with it. I want to do something for 2022, but I'll A, wait until that's done, and B, as huge as it is, Fox and Rabbit's 2022 SAL sounds interesting. It's changing seasons, so I don't know if I'll try to be able to do it as a temperature chart. I have to be able to see all the pieces together, so that I know how to break it up, because if the month doesn't have enough sections to do 30 days or 31, then where does the rest of it go? Or, you know, your border's ginormous, you know, it's a border month, which is what January is for 2022. It's just the entire border. Do you need 31 days out of that border, or do you need 60? You know, is your border cover 2 months or 3 months, you know, because the insides are smaller? Don't know. But I have it all planned out in here, along with other things. So this year I'm doing No New Starts 2022, where I only have a maximum of 22 projects that I'm working on, and I don't start or bring out anything new to work on until I finish something. So I'll probably be starting small things, because when I finish beading the tea house, I can start, and you know, I can go in my bag of Mill Hill kits and pick a new one. But so I mean, I have my whole all my scribbles here of what months go in which release. And it's hard to see, but you can kind of see that my pencil markings, you know, I printed out just the cover from the release and started drawing on it to figure out how many pieces I could get out of it. This is the whole piece, and I've got scribbles and notes all over that of this piece. I broke it into this many, and I mean, there's little pencil marks of where I was planning on doing the breakout. My little book has it has my WIPGO. I'm doing WIPGO. I did for WIPGO, I just did a goal. So like this month is stitch 500 all in a single color. Theoretically, that's a one-day thing. Particularly since I decided to pull Pandemic for that one. So this month I will stitch on Pandemic for at least 500 stitches. It's one color. It's one floss, even though it's multicolor. And then 19 was FFO 2 projects. I have a little basket full of small FFOs that I need to do. Some of them I even have like the accessories pulled for, you know, one of them I need to make into a little zipper pouch. I've got the zipper in there. I've got the fabric scraps, you know, the small pieces of fabric that I need the coordinating fabrics to go with it to make it. I think I've even ironed on the interfacing to stabilize it. Like, I started working on it. It's not done. It needs to get done. So FFO2 projects, and then I threw on the tea house that I need to finish beading along with it. Because I figure I can do some stitching on that. I have 5 days on a 2021 WIP. So look at my list. Which ones did I start in 2021? Okay, which one do I want to work on? That one gets five days. And I set it up that way because when I set up in the past, when I've set up my WIPGO with, you will be working on this project for X amount of time or X amount of stitches or what have you, I do really good until about April. And then I'm burnt out on being told what project to work on. So I decided to try it this way. I saw some other people who did it that way because they didn't have very many WIPs or other personal reasons. And my reasoning was, this gives me the goal. Then I match from my list of WIPs what I feel like working on that also meets this goal. Kind of like the way the challenges in some of the groups work, where they say things like stitch on a lady. I'm finding, I'm in the monthly magazine group, and I'm finding that one to be, for me, a little bit challenging. I like Bringo, which is their January bingo board. It was fun setting it up. I stuck to all the things that I'm supposed to stick to for 2022 or 22 and 22. I'm finding I don't really like to switch projects after an hour. So far, I've either not worked on the project that was called for that day, and I'll have to make it up another day, or I have sat there and worked on the project that was called for like 5 hours. So who knows? I may or may not complete that one. We'll see.